So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where China joins NATO. Now, this is an interesting scenario for multiple reasons. One, that NATO is a Northern Atlantic alliance, meaning that only countries that are in the Northern Atlantic can join the organization. And two, that China does not have good relations with any NATO members other than like maybe Turkey. So really, this is a severely unrealistic scenario. There's really no way that this could happen in real life, but we're going to be making it happen anyway in this scenario. So if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are trying to hit 200,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and all the support by you is greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out the streaming channel. Just did a few streams over the past weekend, and it was pretty fun. So if you want to go check that out, there's a link to it in the description, and it might be up on the screen. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump straight into this scenario. All right, so China, the most unrealistic addition to NATO. Well, maybe not the most unrealistic because, you know, North Korea exists, but they will be joining NATO, and yeah, it doesn't make sense. I did a video with Russia joining NATO, and you know, that made slightly more sense because they're in the Northern Atlantic, but the whole point of NATO is to counter Russia. So I guess that was like the making up part of it. So I guess that kind of made up for that. But this is just weird. Nonetheless, the People's Republic of China joins NATO, and NATO is now the most powerful faction in the world, no doubt about it. I mean, they probably already were, but now even more so. And that's because, you know, the United States and China are the two of the strongest militaries in the world. They're also two of the largest economies in the world, and they're located at a very good location in terms of each other. You know, the United States is on one part of the map, China's on the other part, so, you know, if a big war broke out, then they would have a big advantage with that. But anyway, another big advantage of this is that, like I said earlier, Russia is the biggest enemy of NATO, and NATO was formed to stop Soviet expansion / Russian expansion nowadays. So this is perfect. All right, so in order for us to get ourselves into a war scenario, we are going to be having Russia invade Ukraine. Now, if you've been here for a while, you know this is a catalyst for a lot of things on my channel. It used to be more so. Nowadays, it's not really too much of a catalyst. But yeah, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That has not been working in real life. And right about now, I think it looks something like this. So really, it hasn't moved at all in like the past year. I think Ukraine has made small counter attacks. They haven't really done too much. And at this point, I don't even know what's happening with this war. Like, I don't know how it's going to end, if it's going to end. I doubt there's any land exchange. So yeah, really, whatever's happening here, it's not relevant anymore because this is what's relevant now. Anyway, let's just say that Russia fully mobilizes its entire military. Or no, let's say that NATO stops supplying Ukraine and then Russia fully mobilizes. And this is going to lead to Ukraine's collapse. Without Western support, Ukraine is pretty screwed. And if Russia were to fully mobilize, they were even more screwed. So over the course of a year or two, Russia fully crusades through Ukraine and finishes it off. In the peace treaty, they managed to fully annex Ukraine. Now, I'm not sure how realistic that is because the Ukrainian people, especially the ones over here in the east or the west, would not want that to happen. So yeah, we'll throw in some more unrealism to this video. After this, they go ahead and unite with Belarus. And now Russia is very big. They are also very strong because these lands right here are pretty more, is that even a right phrase? They're a lot more important than lands that are like, you know, over here. So having the value of this plus the value of what Russia really is, which is like this, is going to make them the #2 country in the world once again. Now, in my own personal rankings, I have China stronger than Russia. But like global firepower has Russia over China barely. In this case, now that they have fully annexed Belarus and Ukraine, they are now #2 in the world once again, making them #2 in my rankings as well. I don't know, does that make sense to you guys? Sometimes I try to explain things and I honestly just end up making them more confusing. Anyway, so now Russia is pretty stuck. I mean, they go after Georgia, they annex Georgia, which is pretty easy. But now it gets interesting because you can't go after Armenia, you can't go after Azerbaijan, and you can't go after NATO because that's not, you don't want to do that. So what do? Well, there is one country they can go after, and that's Moldova. Now, the interesting thing here with Moldova is that Moldova has applied to EU membership, a NATO membership, I believe. Actually, no, it was just EU membership. It was not NATO membership. They also have Transnistria, I think is what it's called, is that the Russian troops are stationed there. They're going to go ahead and invade the rest of Moldova. Eventually, all of Russia will start to invade Moldova. But the thing is, the Russian troops, they make a mistake and they accidentally start invading into Romania. And they also get pretty far, and Romanian defensive forces are mobilized and killed off. And, well, if you know anything about NATO, Article 5 of NATO says that if any country within NATO is attacked, then all of them are attacked. Essentially saying that Russia just attacked NATO, even if it was like, you know, by mistake. And you know, maybe realistically, if it was by mistake, then there wouldn't be a giant war breaking out. But since this is the AdizzPro mapping channel, or I guess just the AdizzPro channel, I don't know if I want to be called a mapping channel per se. Of course, it's gonna lead into a giant war. It's called content. Everyone loves content. So yeah, Russia versus NATO. Good job, Russia. Now, of course, I'm not going to just have this video being a Russian beatdown. I mean, as fun as that would be, I don't think a lot of people want to see that. So we're going to have Iran join their side. And surprisingly enough, we're going to have India join their side. Now, okay, I know India is a Russian ally, and I know they hate China, but they're also a good ally to NATO and the United States and the EU. India, in a realistic scenario, would not join this war at all. They would just sit on the sidelines and watch because, you know, Russia was technically the aggressor, and they don't want to be seen as aggressors in a world war. So yeah, India realistically would sit on the side, but we're going to throw in some other, you know, some spicy stuff. You know, we're going to, no pun intended, we're going to throw in India into the mix and make this more of an interesting scenario. You know, spicy stuff because of the spices. You know, the British colonized India first, but you all know history, right? All right, but you know, now that the sides are fair, we're gonna make them even more unfair because I'm not a fair person. North Korea will join in on Russia's side. So will Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. And now that's not fair. I think the blue team would be able to hold off. I don't think they would be able to win. But we're going to give them the addition of Pakistan, South Korea, and Japan. And just like that, it is no longer fair. It's more towards the blue team now because, you know, Pakistan, South Korea, and Japan, they're all top 10 countries in terms of strength. I mean, Iran is up there. Syria and Iraq aren't really. India's number 4. So, yeah, it's hard to balance these things out realistically. But there's no realism in this video. We're going to give Azerbaijan to the blue team. We're going to give Israel to the blue team. And we're going to leave Palestine alone because they've been through enough. Now, interesting thing here with China is that we have to regard their relations with North Korea. Without China, North Korea really isn't much. So, yeah, I guess Russia would be supplying them in this scenario. But they're not going to be having Chinese supplies anymore, and I don't think they're going to last very long without those. Another thing we have to think about is South Korea and Japan. Now, these guys don't like China in real life, but now that they're a NATO ally, I'm sure they're going to look past that as best as they can. The Philippines, however, they're not going to be joining this war. They don't want anything to do with China. Same thing with Vietnam. So there's a few countries down here that might join in this war if China were to be on the red team, but since they're on the blue team with the West, they're not going to be joining. Or, you know, maybe vice versa. Maybe some of these countries would join the West, but since China is on the blue team, they're not going to be joining. That applies to Taiwan, and like I said earlier, the Philippines. That also maybe applies to Australia and New Zealand. I'm going to be having them sit out this video, and yeah, let's just get straight into the fighting. I think this is good enough. All right, so World War III, yes. Who knew that China joining NATO would have such horrible consequences? Starting off where this started, Russian troops are now going to get the authorization to continue into Romania. And Romania is pretty overwhelmed right away. They lose Bucharest. And as a country as a whole, they pretty much collapse. Bulgaria, they also have to scramble, and they don't do so well enough, and they lose all of their Black Sea coast. Russian troops then start to make their way into Turkey and down towards the Aegean Sea. And it is here that NATO finally gets itself together. Turkey mobilizes and sets up a defensive force over here in what was it called? Thrice. That's what it's called. I almost said Thane. Thane is not what it's called. It's called Thrice. Russia manages to reach over to Serbia, which is going to be good for them, maybe. Up in the Baltics, they launch themselves a pretty good offensive into these 3 weaker countries. However, I was just reminded in government recently that the United States has troops like stationed everywhere, like tens of thousands of troops stationed everywhere. So realistically, in real life, unless Russia is sending like 100,000 to 200,000 troops into these 3 countries, they wouldn't be able to wipe them off the map completely because of all of the troops that are stationed here by the other NATO countries, not just the United States. You know, the UK, France, Germany, they have troops stationed here as well. So realistically, even with Romania and Bulgaria as well, they wouldn't be able to wipe them out like they are here. But once again, this channel is for entertainment. It's kind of like the WWE. It's scripted. It's not real. It's for your entertainment. Turkey having 2 forces now. Turkey, having split their military into 2, will go ahead and go into Syria and do what it always likes to do and take out these countries. They work together with Israel, which is unlikely, but they do it anyway. And they managed to pretty much abolish the Syrian government more than it has already been abolished in real life. Syria always catching strays. Anyway, they now make their way into Iraq and Iran until they can't because Iran has mobilized. India will start its invasion into Pakistan, focusing in on these southern areas and trying to get control of a very important river in this region. Pakistan and China will work together to take on Kashmir. This doesn't go well. It just doesn't go well. But China will send forces into this part of India and have a lot of success despite the horrible geography. North Korea gets smacked right away. Like I said, they probably won't be able to stick around long without the help of China. And Japan will go ahead and focus in on these islands, the Kuril Islands, right? Kuril, something like that. And they will work together with China to take on Sakhalin and these southern parts of Russia. Alright, overall, it's been a pretty even war so far. The Middle East isn't going well for the red team, but that's always the case. Back over in Europe, yes, the Finnish and Russian front. Everyone loves this front. Well, Finland's winning it again. Finland is just built different. They're not built to be invaded. They're built to do the invading, especially into Russia. The Russians, man, don't even get me started on the Finnish and the Russians. It just never goes well, and same thing happens here. It just doesn't go well. Maybe it's because they're the happiest and also the most oppressed. Maybe that's why. Back over in the Middle East, Iran is going to go ahead and start to invade into Pakistan. They're working together with India to hopefully wipe out the Pakistani coast. Meanwhile, though, Pakistan does start a series of invasions into India, and this will cause the Indian advance down here to pause for a little bit as India works to regroup and stop this impending invasion. Over here, China continues to have a lot of success, now reaching down to Bangladesh and cutting India into two parts. They then take the southern part and start to move forward into mainland India. I'm just going to go ahead and skip through this. China manages to get it all. And now it's pretty much on to mainland India. Back over here in this part of Russia, you guys have been telling me that I've been kind of underestimating this part, and you know, you're not wrong, but this is a very special scenario. When we look at this map here, and I've done this multiple times before, a lot of Russia is over here, and not a lot of Russia is over here. But this is an interesting war because Russia is fighting on, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fronts. Fighting a 6-front war is not easy, and I don't think anyone would be able to win a 6-front war. So what Russia has done is they have sent a majority of their military to the front lines over here, and not a lot of their military over here. And that's because this area of Russia is not equal to this area of Russia. They are not equal. So losing this half of Russia will still be pretty bad, but it won't be horrible. Whereas, you know, if you lose this part of Russia, you're not going to exist. So yeah, basically they've given up on this part of Russia. And the blue team will have a lot of success invading in through over here. That's not to say that Russia isn't defending, but they certainly aren't defending as well as they should be. And yeah, that leads to China and the blue team just kind of having their way. The US sends special forces into the Siberian regions of Russia to take over any possible land that's valuable. I don't know if there is any. But overall, this part of Russia is now under blue team control, and China can now focus itself on India and Iran. Fortunately, though, their buddy Pakistan is they're not doing well. But they do manage to hold out. They just lose the southern part of their country, which is pretty detrimental. Did I use that word right? Did I say that word right? But supplies are now flowing into Pakistan from China up north here, albeit not at a very fast rate. Back over here in this part of the Middle East, Iranian forces are now working to push back the Turks and the Israelis. This goes pretty well, and they even start to invade into areas of Azerbaijan, but they are eventually stopped because they don't have the capabilities to fight a 2-front war. Or maybe they do. I'm saying that they don't. Back over in the front line of Europe, Russia will continue to try to take more of NATO. They do have a lot of success in taking out Estonia as well as Latvia. However, when it gets down to Lithuania and Poland, they are pretty much stopped by NATO forces. Back down in Romania and Bulgaria, as well as Turkey, we see a lot of land being retaken by NATO as Russia is losing control of these lands. There's also a lot of unrest by the captured areas. The civilians do not want to be Russian. Additionally, we're seeing a lot of uprisings in the Ukrainian lands, which they recently took, and even some in the Belarusian lands they recently took. Those who want to fight for a free Belarus and were forced into the new Russian government / empire. I'd like to call big, mean countries empires a lot, so I might just start doing that and not explaining it. At this point, though, Russia is losing land. They lost all of their land in Slovakia and Hungary and are starting to lose land in Poland. NATO successfully re-establishes contact with Bulgaria and the other Balkan NATO countries. And now Russia is in desperation mode as they're going to try to recruit more countries onto their side. They're going to go ahead and get Kazakhstan as well as Mongolia. Mongolia is a pretty big one because they aren't necessarily going to do anything, but they are going to serve as a distraction. And the Mongol government was pretty fooled by this. They said they were told that Russian troops would come over and fight on this front now, but there are no Russian troops. So Mongolia, they're going to try. They will send troops into China. They're going to go into Inner Mongolia, which is a province in China, and they're going to do that. And then they are immediately going to get spanked. And no, not the good kind of spanking, you weirdos. They're just completely ran over. Mongolia, man, I'm sorry, you aren't what you used to be, and unfortunately that leads to you being completely owned by China. And in a way, this kind of like backfires for Russia because now China is sending troops into this land which they originally had no intent of invading. But now they're doing that, and they're also going into parts of Kazakhstan. As for the Indian front, though, this is kind of a good thing because China becomes distracted. India is able to push out all of the Pakistani and Chinese troops. They don't really touch this part of India because they don't have, they're not too worried about that. They're more worried about taking out their arch nemesis, Pakistan, because that's what the biggest ops do to each other. They invade into areas of Pakistan while China is distracted and establish themselves a large amount of land. Russia and Iran will now work together to take out Azerbaijan and connect themselves to each other. However, this connection is probably going to be severed soon as Turkey and other NATO countries, as well as Israel, will work to push into northern Iran. Finland, being Russia's biggest enemy, and honestly, they own Russia, they're going to take over all of the Kola Peninsula and Karelia. Right? No. Yeah, Karelia, I was right. So now Finland is basically knocking on the doors of St. Petersburg, but Russia will be able to finally hold off Finland as Finland is stopped from any further advancement and even pushed back by the Russians. And now we're pretty much at a stalemate. At this point in time, the world has slowed down a lot in the war phase. Russia is losing land in Europe, but they're also not going to get invaded by the blue team per se. India and Pakistan have pretty much locked each other. China is moving troops back to India in the meantime. In the Middle East, Turkey and Iran have been pretty much taking each other's land for a while now. Like, this land goes to Iran and then Turkey takes it right back, so on and so forth. But to kind of highlight what Russia's been doing in Europe, I said they were losing land, and they are continually losing land as Bucharest is taken back by NATO. Eventually, all of Romania is freed, and eventually Moldova is as well. Russia then starts to lose its first pieces of land in the war as this part of Ukraine goes over. I just realized that Kaliningrad never got touched. Well, they lost Kaliningrad a while ago. There we go with that. I think also earlier in the video I said that it's been a few years at one point, meaning that there was a time jump from 2024 to 2026. Within that time, Sweden would have joined NATO. Turkey recently ratified them, and I'm sure Hungary will follow suit soon enough. So yeah, Sweden would join NATO, but since that I missed that at the beginning of the video, I'm going to leave them out for now. So Sweden realistically would have been in NATO, but there's no realism in this video, so they're not in NATO because I said so. I'm starting to understand that like non-English speakers or people who have English as a second or even third language, how like difficult these videos must be for them to watch, because I'm not a very good English speaker myself, even though it's my main language. So yeah, my apologies, non-English speakers. I'm sure people who have English as their first language also have trouble watching these videos. All right, now India. China is back and they are doing very good. Now the Himalaya mountains, they don't exist, so China basically just goes right through them. And with the help of China, Pakistan is able to push back the Indians who have invaded their own land and start to establish themselves down south furthermore. They now enter into India as a whole. However, India has a pretty good counter defensive measure, and they push back this land gain pretty good, pretty well. But they do pretty much abandon this southern area, which is kind of a dumb move by them. I don't know why they would do that, because the Pakistanis weren't really trying to take it back, but they do anyway. And now it's officially stalemated, so no one's making any moves on either side. Pakistan and China will work together to cut back on Iran and eventually kick them out of Pakistan. And then they will now go into mainland Iran, opening up a second front for Iran to deal with defensively. Because remember, they're now being invaded over here. In the Baltics, Russia will make an effort to completely take over all three countries. This has been a pretty surprising development for NATO. They weren't expecting this to happen, but it happens anyway. Unfortunately, though, for Russia, that was a pretty dumb move because they're now losing land in Ukraine, and eventually a Ukrainian uprising happens, which will give NATO a lot more land than they had expected. But the thing about this uprising, though, is that it's pretty short-lived, and Russia starts to flood back into these areas until NATO troops can successfully establish themselves a defensive front, in which they eventually do, and now we have this happening, and it's pretty much stalemated like this. So in order for NATO to fully invade and take out Russia, they're going to have to take back the Baltic countries, which Russia recently just got themselves a hold of. Another way they could win is by taking out both India, Iran, and Iraq. However, that's also pretty unlikely considering that India has stalemated the Chinese and the Pakistanis. Turkey and Iran are also stalemated at this point, and also Israel. So yeah, that's another reason. And really, it all comes down to the Western Front over here in Europe. So NATO gears up for its largest invasion in history, NATO history, I guess, because they haven't really been activated before, other than 9/11. But I'm not really sure. I mean, Afghanistan kind of got jumped. But that really wasn't like a big war. That was like it was a big war because it lasted a long time, but it wasn't like a mass casualty war. Like millions. It wasn't never mind. It wasn't conventional war. It was journeying and bombing and raids. It was an interesting war. So making large amounts of amphibious invasions and pretty much just working with civilian militias that were stationed in the Baltics, they're able to take back the three countries in a matter of a couple months. And from here, they start their invasion into mainland Russia with a decisive victory in St. Petersburg, pretty much declaring that NATO has won this war. However, fighting does not immediately end, as NATO pushes around Russia a little bit more before they surrender, taking lands in Crimea and Ukraine. At this point, Russia has only lost land up here in the Kola Peninsula / Karelia, and any land that Finland has taken. Remember that this land was from Belarus, and this land was from Ukraine. So they really haven't lost too much land, or we're not counting this, I guess. They haven't lost too much valuable land. So what they decide to do is they decide to pull out of the war, and with them pulling out of the war, we also have Iran and India pulling out of the war, meaning that NATO unconditionally, NATO wins by default. Of course, fighting could have continued, and who knows, maybe Russia gets some reinforcements from other countries. Maybe they do conscription and get civilian armies popping up. But they decide to pull out of the war while they still have themselves a strong country. And we can go ahead and try to take a look at this peace treaty here, but I'm not really sure how it's going to work because they pulled out of the war. There really wasn't a decisive victory. We'll see. All right, so in this peace treaty here, it's really not too much other than China, but we'll start with Europe. So Finland will go ahead and get itself a lot of land from this war. They got the most amount of land from any NATO country apart from China. Maybe Turkey. As we can see here, Russia was forced to spit out all of Belarus and Ukraine. They were made into republics who then joined NATO. Moldova was freed and they ended up joining NATO. And Kaliningrad was split between Lithuania and Poland. In the Middle East, we have weird things happening. Israel doesn't get any land from this war, and that's because they probably wouldn't be able to hold on to the land realistically. Lebanon would rebel, so I didn't give them Lebanon. Maybe they get paid reparations or something. I don't know. Iran, nothing happens to them other than them giving up a tiny bit of land so that Turkey can connect up with Azerbaijan, because we all know Turkey and Azerbaijan love each other dearly. Russia, not much happened to them other than losing land to Finland. They didn't lose too much land elsewhere. In India, they didn't lose anything. The Kaliningrad dispute was settled, and China took a little bit of land from them, but other than that, they didn't lose anything. And then on to China. So China Mongolia essentially collapsed after the Chinese invasion. And so Mongolia was kind of split between Russia and China. They then also took over a little bit of land from Russia in order to get access to the Sea of Japan. And then we also have Korea uniting under one, and Japan took over Sakhalin as well as the Kuril Islands, or Kuril. Is that how you say it? Kuril? They took over these islands. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to show some support on it by liking, subscribing, leaving a comment with your suggestions or ideas. All of that support is greatly appreciated because once again, we are trying to hit 200,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And yeah, we're at 136,000 now. So that's around 64,000 to go. Doable, but unlikely, but surprise me. Make sure to check out the streaming channel, links in the description to that. Maybe you saw it be on the screen at the beginning of this video. I don't know if you did or not. Maybe I'll try to pin it in the comments as well. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, see you in the next video. And of course, thank you to all the super fans, which include Matthew Newman, Yam Yam, Kali Speaks Plays, Shadow Gamer Z, Deva Edits, Mr. Bonk 7, Hammer Toad 45, Patrick Clauser, Connor the Gamer, Texan Cowboy Cheese, Poland Country Ball, Yakko, Nevada Garbage Trucks, DW Cool Dude, Soviet Ball, and Serminator. Once again, thank you guys.